Hello, my name is Ryann Davis. I am a current master's student in communication and development studies. I recently graduated with my bachelor's in political science from the College of Arts and Sciences this past May, and I'm the current Crane Scholarship Fellow for the 2025 to 26 academic year. And I'm here with Dr. David Crane if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Well, hello, and I'm really glad to be here. And to all fellow Bobcats, it's great to be a part of this program that Dean Ando has started. And Ryan, I'm looking forward to just chatting with you about my time in Ohio University.
Awesome. Okay, so the first question that I have is a fill in the blank kind of question. Fill in the blank. I never thought I'd be someone who blank, but here I am.
I never thought I would be the founding chief prosecutor of the International War Crimes Tribunal in West Africa, called the UN Special Court for Sierra Leone.
That's awesome. And then this kind of relates to that because your answer will probably be similar. But what is the most surprising place that your degree through the College of Arts and Sciences has taken you?
Many places actually, but one of the areas was being the legal advisor to some of America's most elite special operations units when I was a judge advocate and follow on in the U.S. Army and the federal government.
That's awesome. Walk me through the moment you realized what you wanted to do with your life. Where were you? What kind of led you to that?
Well, that's almost a very philosophical, almost a religious kind of question, so to speak. I recall in October of 1968, I was sitting out on a very beautiful fall day in front of the then library for Ohio University, Chubb Hall. Alden Library was physically being constructed. I remember it was in the afternoon, and I was reading one of my history texts. I was taking Western Civilization with Dr. James Chastain, and I was reading it, and it was almost epiphany how much I enjoy learning and studying, and it was almost like it kind of washed over me, and I never stopped studying and working hard. But I can remember that moment even to this day. It was almost like something being struck by lightning. But I think that's where I realized that I am moving in a direction that I want to be.
That's really wonderful. And then I feel like a lot of students might see, or they might be worried, like when they're graduating, seeing they're not getting the immediate job that they want, coming out of undergrad and that sort of thing. That's something that I feel like weighs down on a lot of especially undergraduate students. What's a job that at the time might have seemed like just a stepping stone, but actually changed a lot for you?
Well, I went after I graduated in 1972 and with a degree in history. I obviously stayed around one more year because my wife was a year behind me, and so I got my Master's of Arts degree from the Center for International Studies there in Athens, and uh, I got orders to go to Vietnam, and I had graduated in 72, but I also was commissioned in the regular army as an infantry officer. And so I went from the hallowed halls of Ohio University in command of 55 paratroopers in the 101st Airborne Division. And I was only 23 years old, and I still consider it the most important job I've ever had in my life. And that was the lives of 54 Americans and then me during those incredible times.
That's really wonderful. So what's something that you have maybe failed at or thought that you failed at the time that has taught you the most or has taught you a lot more than you expected?
Well, you have to learn from adversity, and things just happen in life. And I recall when I graduated from law school, the first time I took the bar, much to my surprise, I actually failed it. And I went back to try. They allow you to go back and review your answers. And the person who told me the reason why you failed is your handwriting was so bad we couldn't read the answer. And I said, "You're kidding me." So the next time I took it, I printed because this is back in the days
Yeah.
when this was back in the days when there was no computers, there were typewriters and
Hmm.
stuff. But you took the bar exam like you take you had to handwrite it. So I literally printed the next time around and obviously passed. But that was crushing, because you have to wait about 6 months, and you really aren't certain. My God, I went through law school and I did fairly well, and much to my surprise, you have this strong. But you learn from those kind of adverse situations where you have to do the best you can, and just tough it up. And so that was my first failure, so to speak, and it was humbling. But you have to remain humble throughout life and to expect that you're going to be challenged. And I had other challenges as well, but that one kind of sticks with me, and it's kind of funny in the sense of the reason. It's not the fact that I didn't know the law; I just couldn't read my answers.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that that is a really good lesson from that.
In other words, of course, now in this day and age, they're not even teaching cursive anymore, so I guess you would have to print. But now, of
Yeah.
course, this is all done online.
Hmm. I want to move into looking at your current role just a little bit. So, generally, what does a typical Tuesday look like for you for your work life?
Well, of course, I'm semi-retired, but in fact, based in my position in the world, you never really retire. The world always asks things of you, and of course, my over the past 3 years, my one of my major focuses, I have two major focuses, running the Global Accountability Network, which has projects around the world seeking justice for victims of atrocity. But I have also been very much involved in for 3 intense years of creating the Special Tribunal on the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, which came into fruition in June of this year. But it took uh, myself and many others 3 years to build the political will and then the compromise in a statute that everyone could live with. And I still do this. I'm still working for the people of Ukraine, working this. Now we're getting ready to actually physically set up the tribunal. And actually, I've just recently learned that my name is being considered to be the chief prosecutor of the trial of the century. So that's going to occupy but the typical day is working on Ukraine, working with the great group of academics, practitioners, and students of the Global Accountability Network continue to work. So I'm still, trying to face down the beast of impunity, which raises its ugly head around the world, and try to make the world a better place. So I'm still busy.
I'm sure you sound busy. That's really awesome to hear. I remember hearing you when you came to OU, I think last year or the year before, and you were talking about just starting the tribunal, but you weren't quite in the stage yet. So that's really, really great to hear.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'd love to come back and stand in front of you and say, we did it. And now it's just the Council of Europe has entered into an agreement with Ukraine to create the special tribunal, and now the countries, the 45 nations of the Council of Europe, have to ratify the agreement. But that's ongoing, and then once that happens, we will kick off the practical aspects of actually setting up that tribunal.
That's really wonderful. Um, what part of your job do you think would surprise people the most?
Well, I, I don't know if it surprises people or not, but I recall back and of course I've seen the world and I've been in many places, and I thought I'd seen the horrors of the world, being a special operations officer, a senior intelligence officer, a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. I've always thought that I would, I'd seen the world, but the horrors that I saw in in West Africa did not prepare me for the shock of what those people went through. So that kind of surprised me. That even though I had been around the world, I just remember standing in front. In our first, I just finished our first town hall meeting in Kenema in eastern Sierra Leone, and right near there was a place called Savage Waters where they would move the Sierra Leonean population and chain them to diamond pits and work them to death, and then throw their bodies into a pit called Savage Waters. And I remember that was our first crime scene, and our investigatory teams were just starting to rope off the area, and unfortunately, we were going to have to drain the pool. And I remember standing literally up to my knees in bones, and I remember turning to my chief of investigations and I was just furious. And I said, we're going to get these bastards for what they've done to the people of Sierra Leone. But I was surprised at the horror of how human beings can do things to other human beings, and I've never reconciled that. And I still suffer from PTSD from my time in West Africa, even though I had been a special operations officer chasing terrorists around the world, doing various things, but I was never prepared to see the horror of the murder, rape, maiming, and mutilation of over 1.2 million human beings there. So that was a surprise. I was surprised, one, the horror, but two, how I was still able to maintain my sense of focus by developing kind of a righteous fury, because the practical part of this was I was the only person in the world that actually could seek justice for these people, and so I was going to do that. But I was very surprised at the horror of it all. Don't mean to be a downer, but that was a huge surprise.
Mm-hmm.
I really fully didn't understand what these people went through until I was actually there.
That's really, really terrible, and that's all. Sorry, I'm at a loss for words about that. Kind of moving to now. Um,
Sure.
I am. Oh wow. What problem are you trying to solve right now with these sorts of things that you experienced and went through, saw other people go through, and helped these people with, and how have you kind of translated that into whatever problem you're trying to solve right
Well,
now?
again, that righteous fury, which I developed back in 2002, has never left me. And so that's one of the reasons in Epidus is that I created the Global Accountability Network to continue developing methodologies and assisting in creating justice mechanisms for victims of atrocity and investigating them, and keeping the focus of the world, which is always wandering away on these atrocities, so that we could get some kind of justice for them. So that's kind of my answer.
Um, and last thing related to your current role, if you could change one thing about the industry that you are in, what would it be?
Well, the challenge of creating justice mechanisms, and I've created two now: the Special Court for Sierra Leone and now the Special Tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine. Uh, I would love to have the world be more interested in actually seeking justice for victims of atrocity. The creation of justice mechanisms, tribunals, and courts is not a legal decision, it's a political decision by the international community. And, uh, you know, the United Nations and the international community in general don't like to set up tribunals and courts, international tribunals and courts. And it's a real struggle. And so I would like them to understand that that it's not about cost. It's about justice for the victims of atrocity. And if I could just change that, but as I've always said, the bright red thread of setting up these justice mechanisms is politics. I'm a realist, not a altruist. In other words, people would say, well, I'd like world peace and I'd like to buy the world a Coke and live in harmony and all of that stuff. That's just not the world. John Keegan, the famous military historian from Britain, said the history of the war is the history of mankind, and the history of mankind is the history of war. And alas, that's true. Now, I'm actually, despite what I'm saying, I'm kind of an optimist. I always look at the world as the glass is half full. So, I take on the challenges of justice for victims of atrocity as the way the world is, not the way I would like to see the world. So that, at the end of the day, you're a better and a more effective creator and leader when you take the world on as it is not as the way you'd like it to be, because it'll never be the way you'd like it to be. And so, at the end of the day, that's how you do it, is you move forward in a realistic way. And, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards, but you keep leaning forward, and you'd be surprised all of a sudden, just like the special tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine. Just a year ago, I never thought it was going to happen. And you just keep working at it, and things happen, and bang, all of a sudden we have a tribunal now. So anyway, it's somewhat of an answer to your important question, but that's kind of my perspective.
Hmm. That's a really good answer. I really liked your point about recognizing issues of justice as political decisions rather than an issue of the law, especially with the landscape of international law. So
Sure, it is.
I really like that perspective. Um, this is now kind of moving into more your experience with the College of Arts and Sciences. So, what's a skill that you learned at the College of Arts and Sciences that you didn't realize would be important later in life?
Well, I was a B student in high school. I wasn't a bad student, but I really wasn't an effective student. And I just went to school versus, it was something I had to do. And so it was one of those things. But, the skill that I learned, uh, the initial, I go back to that epiphany in front of Chubb Hall, where all of a sudden, this is truly what learning is all about. And so I learned how to uh, take a problem and solve it, whatever that may be, whether I was taking physics or meteorology or geology or Latin, or I was taking various history courses, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, I learned to take each of those subjects, figure out the 4 corners of it, and then apply myself to solving those problems. So, the foundation of my entire career and life began in Athens, Ohio, at Ohio University, at so many levels that I could probably spend the rest of the afternoon. But to answer your question specifically, I learned a respect for knowledge and a love of learning, and I think that's started my pathway largely to success.
That's really sweet. This is my favorite question, so I'm excited to hear your answer for this.
I
What
hope it's
is
my favorite answer.
Me too. um, what is something you learned the hard way in your career?
Well, it's interesting. You don't really understand yourself until you put yourself in circumstances that challenge you and make you do things that you really, in your heart of hearts, say, I don't think I can do this. And then you go out and you do it, and you look back and you go, my God, I actually did that. And there are dozens of things that I've done in my career, many of them cheating death. I actually shouldn't be here. I am more lucky than I am good. But the things that I have done in my career, both mainly in special operations and intelligence, and all of the things that I have been doing, I did around the world. And I might want to include, my wonderful wife, who I met, courted, and married at Ohio University, Judy, class of '73. She also was in the national security business. and did some amazing things as well. So, you know, we have survived situations that we shouldn't have actually survived. When you look back on those, particularly now that I'm older than dirt, uh, you go, "Wow, that was a close call," or "Wow, that was quite the adventure." And some people goes, "Well, kind of, what did you, what was it that you do?" And of course, both Judy and I really can't talk much about what we did, but I refer people to a couple of movies, Clear and Present Danger uh, with Harrison Ford, and another uh, uh, really amazing movie that captured a moment in my life was Charlie Wilson's War, with Tom Hanks playing Congressman Charlie Wilson. That's about as all I can say about one of the more dangerous things that we did. I remember was invited by the government of Colombia to give a speech at their national library, and I remember flying into Colombia and kind of chuckling to myself that it's the first time I've ever been into Colombia legally. So I'll just leave it at that.
Um, that's really interesting. I would love to hear, this is not in my list of questions, but more about how you met Judy.
Well, it's interesting. I was in a fraternity, and we had a tea, as we used to call them, and we invited another sorority to come at Baker Center. Now, of course, the Baker Center I'm talking about is now the Scripps College there, right across from the Gateway. But that was Baker Center then, and I recall back in it was October of 19 or late September of 1970, and this is just the first quarter. We were in quarters back then. This is the first quarter after the closure of Ohio University, and in my end of my sophomore year, where we closed because of the riots that went on. And so I went, and back in those days, we could at 18 you could drink 3.2 beer, and so there was a keg of Stroh's beer and various other beverages, and this what I thought was a really quite beautiful person walked in, but she looked familiar. And so I walked up to her and I introduced myself, and I said, you look very familiar to someone who I've known who just graduated, Carol Bryant, or Carol Ponder. And she goes, "Yeah, that's my sister." And I said, "Well, hello." And now, what is it? My goodness, 54 years later, here we still are. So that's how I met her, just casually, by just a happenstance. If I had not had gone to the event, I never would have probably have met her. I might have, but she ended up being, and I'm, my sister-in-law, Carol, class of 1970 at Ohio, will be visiting us here in about a week, but we have been together also. She married a fraternity brother of mine, Fred Bryant, class of 1969. So, we have been together, the four of us, all these years. So I've known Fred and Carol Bryant since I was 18 years old. So it's back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
That's really sweet.
Yeah,
So,
that's a true story, and there you are.
um, I this is a little bit more focused on the advice that you've received, whether throughout your career or at the College of Arts and Sciences. So, what is the best piece of professional advice that you've ever received?
Uh, saw the wood in front of you. In other words, as you go into a career, and it's going to vary. It's not going to be, you'll be surprised what you're doing 30 years from now, and it won't be uh, what you think it'll be. But a lot of people take a job always looking over the horizon either for a new job or just advancing in that particular career field and getting ahead and getting promoted and getting raises and stuff like that. But you're looking beyond the horizon and never focusing on learning what you're supposed to be learning and doing what you're supposed to be doing right there. Hence, sawing the wood in front of you. And so, that's something that I've always focused on. I've always did that. I just took the job that was given to me, did the best job I could at it, and you'd be surprised how doors of opportunity open based on that. Because at the end of the day, I think this is really important, is reputation is really at the end of the day what you carry with you through your life. And most people never know their reputation. I would say a vast majority of people never in their lives understand what their reputation is. I had the occasion to actually have my reputation told of me. I had been about 3/4 of the way of my time in West Africa, and I was getting ready to leave in about 6 months. And one of my mentors and someone who politically guarded me from the Bush administration that got angry with me from time to time, that's George W. Bush, was the Secretary of State, Colin Powell. And it was during the Christmas holidays, and so I was back home, back in Washington, D.C., where my wife was working with the Defense Intelligence Agency. And so I was home for Christmas. We had set up an office call with Secretary Powell. I just wanted to, because he was really important in protecting me and was a big supporter of my work, to include taking down the first sitting head of state in history, President Charles Taylor, for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And so I just want to stop by and say goodbye, because he was resigning and leaving at the end of the year. This is 2004. I was leaving in 2005. And so I went into this to his office, beautiful office. I mean, your Secretary of State even had its own fireplace, and they had set up. I didn't have much time because I had to go testify also before the House at the time International Relations Committee on the Hill, and of course he's Secretary of State, so he's kind of busy too. But I had 15 minutes with him, and he came out and greeted me. We went into his office and closed the door, and we were sitting there sipping coffee and ice water right next to the fire. And I said, I've got to ask you this question, because my wife told me to ask you this question. And that is, how the hell did I get this job? I'm talking about being the chief prosecutor, the first American since Robert Jackson at Nuremberg to actually have the job. And he laughed, and he said, when they came in to, when they came in to talk to me about you, the U.S. is going to nominate you to be the chief prosecutor to the Security Council and to the Secretary General, we weren't looking for a good lawyer. I mean, obviously, I was a senior executive and deputy inspector general of the Department of Defense at the time. And he goes, what we really needed is someone who had the experience and the ability to set up a new organization and manage it to success. And he goes, your reputation in the federal government was that was you. So he literally told me why I was valued in my career was that I could take a new idea and turn it into an operating office and manage it to success. And I was just kind of taken by that. So that's kind of an important lesson, is sawing the wood in front of you and your reputation. Your reputation is like, you walk up to a very still pond and you drop a pebble into the pond, and those ripples that go out towards the bank is your reputation. And I think that's so important. So, that was important advice given to me, and I followed that. And obviously it got me somewhere in the world. So, but again, just saw the wood in front of you, do the best you can. In some cases, take the jobs that nobody wants and do that very well as well. And people start talking about you. People are going to talk about you good or bad. That's your reputation. But, like I said, you never really know what that is. You just keep working hard, doing the best you can, and boom, all of a sudden you'll be surprised where you'll be, like I said, 30 years from now. And it will not be the job you thought you had. When I graduated from High University with a master's degree in international affairs, I was going in the Army. It was the Vietnam era. I had expected that. I was a regular Army officer. My wife had gotten her bachelor's degree in education with a focus on child development, and yet she went on to be a very respected and senior member of a major intelligence organization. And of course, in 1973, when we both got in our Volkswagen and headed south for Fort Benning, Georgia, neither of us knew where our paths were going to lead us as we left Ohio University. So, it's just one of those fascinating parts about life, actually. Why would you want to do the same thing all your life? And I think this is also another important footnote, is that when you graduate from Ohio University, you're young, and the fact that you are doing a particular job that you don't particularly care for, that's okay. Learn from it, do the best you can, and then, opportunities are everywhere. You're going to be 22, 23 years old, 24 when you leave. You've got years of experimentation and trying to figure out who and what you are and where you want to be, so that, don't lock yourself into anything. You're not in trouble if you are not doing anything when you graduate. Pick the jobs that excite you, try to get that job, work towards those jobs, and then again, new opportunities are going to hit you as you go through life that you never even expected. And some of those doors of opportunity, the room that is shown may be completely dark. It may be a very scary thing, to step into a room where you don't know exactly what that is or what's in that room. Most people, in fact, that vast majority of people, never go into that room, and those doors of opportunities close really fast. But I was always one of those people that marched, and same with my wife, is to walk into through those doors where the room is dark on the other side, and that makes for a pretty darn exciting life. But again, saw the wood in front of you, and work hard, and do the best you can. But don't lock yourself in, because you'll be surprised where you're going with this, and look for other opportunities, and other learning experiences and other careers. And because you want to be able to sit on your front porch at my age and go, wow, that was a hell of a ride.
That's really sweet. I really like that piece of advice, especially for undergraduates or even graduate students, those who are graduating, and being worried about that first job post grad. Sawing at the wood in front of you, I really like that. These next questions are a little bit more creative, so
Okay.
you can take your time to answer if you need to. You kind of already answered this one actually a little bit earlier, but if your career was a movie, what would be the title and the genre of the movie?
That is an interesting. I think it would be a historical fiction, or it could be and it would be called "You Saved My Life." And so that's what my. Do I have to tell you about the movie, or is that just so? The movie would be "You Saved My Life," and it would be either historical fiction, or based on a true story.
That's cool. Um, and then,
I could tell you why I said that,
yeah,
but
I
maybe
would love
that's
to hear
later.
why you said it.
Well, I finished my work in West Africa and came home, and I went to be a professor of law at Syracuse University College of Law, where I actually went to law school. I was invited to come back, and so I was doing my professor academic thing, and I was in. This is 2015. I had left Sierra Leone in 2005, so this was 10 years later, and I was in The Hague, and I was teaching a summer part of a summer course and I was teaching a portion of that on how you create a tribunal. And it was the first day, and I had just finished our first morning session. And during the morning break, a tall young man came up to me and said, "Professor Crane." I said, "Hi, how are you? And what's your name?" And his name is Mohammed. And he said, "I was in Sierra Leone. And I just wanted to tell you that when you came up to speak to us former child soldiers in Kabbalah, and you told us that you were not going to prosecute any child for atrocities because you felt that no child had the capacity to commit an international crime. And you told us that the most important thing for you to do is to learn how to read and write and apply yourself, and that I encourage you to do that stuff." He goes, "I just want to tell you," and he reached out his hand again to shake my hand. He goes, "You saved my life." He goes, I am now a lawyer in the United States, and I'm a partner in a law firm. And because of your encouragement and your mercy of not prosecuting me because I was a killer, you allowed me to refocus my life. And I just want to tell you that you saved my life." And I have a picture of the two of us standing together framed on my wall, because that's a moment where, in the business that I am, you don't get a lot of compliments, but to actually have some person, there were over 600 young men in this audience just going back to school after this 10-year civil war. They were all child soldiers. In the middle of all of them was this young man who had made a success for himself. He'd immigrated to the United States, went to school, went to college, went to law school, and now he was a successful lawyer. So that was really kind of a neat thing. So that has stuck with me just all my life, despite all the pain and suffering I've seen. That is really a bright and shining, glowing moment when that happened.
That's really wonderful. And I really like your explanation. That makes so much sense. That's really sweet. And then, what is something that you have accomplished that your college professors would be surprised to hear about?
I lived. I survived many harrowing moments, in academia, which is important and stuff. But and that's a respectful and important job, and it's a critical job. I learned so much from my professors, but it is quite the bubble. And even though they do their research and do the important work that they do, at the end of the day, and I'm very careful about that because I don't really talk about it, because some of the things that I've done have been throughout my life, not just the moment in West Africa, but have just been extraordinarily dangerous and important. And I think they would be quite surprised. Once upon a time, I was your worst nightmare. I was a special operations officer who, when we came through your door, it was the last thing you saw, because that was our job, and you were a bad guy, and legally you were a target. And so that's kind of a surprising thing, because I'm introduced as doctor or professor or what have you, but I've had a interesting side to me that back when I was a little bit younger, that would probably surprise some of my colleagues. I'm being quite honest and open
Yeah.
with you.
um, and then I think I just have one more question for you. Uh, what are you most excited for in the next chapter of your life?
Well, the most important title that I have, and I have to tell you this, and I have many titles, some of them negative actually, but the bottom line is the most important title that I do have now is I am called Andad, which is my grandchildren call me because they couldn't say granddad. So my first grandchild called me Andad because she couldn't form the GR. And so all the rest of the grandchildren have picked up on that. So I am now Andad, and to me that's the most important title I've ever gotten. And The joy of just watching these young girls thrive. I've got one that's in a ballet company. I've got another one that's she's 6, but she's already kind of almost at a pre-Olympic level in gymnastics. She just did her first gymnastics meet last week. Yeah, so I'm excited about the next chapter, and yeah, to be honest with you, if I ever have the opportunity to prosecute Vladimir Putin for aggression, I'd kind of take that too. So, like I said, I've had an amazing life with a beautiful woman who I met, who's also had an amazing life, and who's also now called Amy because they couldn't say Grammy. So we're Amy and Dad. But and I'm sure my wife Judy would say the same thing. It truly, and this is, I don't want to make this sound trite, it truly began uh, at Ohio University. And, our paths have never been brighter, but, when we pulled away in our little Volkswagen and headed south, we had no idea where this was going to end up. But looking back on it now, since I've seen a beginning, middle, and not an end yet, but at the end of the day, it did truly start in so many levels there on the college green in front of Chubb Hall, studying that October 1968 afternoon, realizing that, my gosh, uh, knowledge does crown those who seek her.
That's really wonderful answer. I don't think I have any other questions, but it's been wonderful. Yeah, we can.
Mm-hmm. Great question. I would love to do that. So we can go ahead and 3, 2, 1. Well, let's kind of change the gears now, Ryan. And you are I believe you are the fourth recipient of the David M. Crane International Graduate Studies student, a fellowship. And the reason I started this fellowship was to kind of replicate the opportunity that I had when I was just graduated from Ohio University with a bachelor's degree in '72, was the opportunity to actually get a fellowship, a National Defense Language Fellowship, and get my master's degree in African Studies or International Affairs with a focus on West Africa, ironically. And so that was the reason why I started this fellowship that you now are a proud recipient of. But what does that mean to you? How are you doing? What kind of goals and aspirations that you have based on this opportunity to get yourself started?
Um, Thank you for asking. I just finished actually my first semester of my master's program yesterday, so I'm really excited
Well,
about that.
congratulations.
Thank you. um, Honestly, the fellowship has just made it possible for me to go to graduate school in general. I'm a first generation college student, so I'm the first one in my family to go get a bachelor's degree. And then after that, going to grad school was not something that I ever expected for myself, or at least I didn't until I came to college. And being able to have this fellowship has helped me so much financially. Being able to go to school and not have to worry about that because that's half the battle of being a graduate student or a student more generally, is being able to afford it. And that's been so helpful for me. And then this program, Communication and Development Studies, and also just the Center for International Studies more generally, is so unique. Being based in rural Ohio and having such a large international community, larger than even what I experienced growing up with in Dayton, has been amazing. And within communication and development studies, my focus is more so in urban development and equitable development. So I'm starting my proposal process for my capstone project slash thesis that I'll be doing next year. And I am right now planning on focusing on how cities communicate development to the community, or how that is sort of negotiated between a city government and a community. So if you look at the case of like Cincinnati over the Rhine, Vine Street, halfway you go down the street and it's gorgeous, and then the other half is businesses that have been gutted, people that are being evicted because they're going through this major development process. So I'm curious about not just the ethics, maybe of gentrification or development, but how do you create a city that is sustainable and green for everybody? And how do you negotiate that with the community and do it in a way that gives them agency? So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm loving my program. I'm one of two American students out of 18. Everybody is from all over the world: West Africa, East Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and it's been really wonderful to get to meet people not just from all over the world, but hear so many different perspectives on not just culture, but education, community, and collaboration. It's been a really wonderful experience. So thank you for that, and I really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, and that's you are a perfect example of the type of student that I was hoping to be a Crane Fellow. So that's good for you. And one of the things I might want to add to this and to my discussion is I have found that Americans don't know languages at all, but if you can learn another language, and this is something that you can do through Babbel. It's not hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you can learn another language in whatever form that may be, that will be as important as your college degrees because so few American students can do that. So I hope you either are learning or you do speak another language, but that is a major plus in your future. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would just commend that to you, but also to any and all Mohawk University graduates that knowing another language when you graduate or learning another language afterwards, it doesn't matter when you learn it, but having the ability to speak another language, and it doesn't matter which language, is a real plus in for employers because we do live in a multicultural world, and so and with the new school having been inaugurated with incorporating languages in the school, it's a very innovative and important step forward in emphasizing the importance of learning another language in your studies or elsewhere in your life.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I did in undergrad, I have a minor in Spanish, and so that was part of the reason I almost was a Spanish major. But I'm really interested in learning Swahili specifically. I've started learning Dutch a little bit, but
It's not possible to learn Dutch.
yeah. And see,
Yeah,
that's what I'm finding is that it's
yeah,
very similar to English in a lot of
well,
ways.
there are certain languages that are hard. Dutch is one of them. I was
Yeah.
just in Iceland, and it's a non-learnable language. You can't even pronounce the words, let
Hmm.
alone understand the language itself. But there are
Yeah.
just certain languages that are very difficult. But that's good that you are comfortable with Spanish.
Hmm.
It's just that make sure that you make that prominently on your resume
Hmm.
because that will be because when employers look at you, they're looking at you. What do you bring to the table, and what is your potential uh, with the group that or company or whatever organization you're joining?
Hmm.
So they're looking at what you can bring to the table and your potential. And if you can show that you can speak another language is always a huge plus. So never put, the resumes tend to put the languages at the bottom. I would put the languages pretty much at the top because that's what people will pick right up on. That's what I would pick up on, and I've hired hundreds of people over my lifetime, and the ability to learn a language has always been of course, in the business I was in. But the bottom line is that that's always something that employers are looking for because you're needed.
Yeah. 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 Okay, I'll count down like you did. Three, two, one. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Crane. It's been wonderful to hear from you, and I'm walking away with this, walking away from this with a lot of advice, and I hope that anybody else who watches also is. So it's been wonderful getting to speak to you.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Go Bobcats and stand up and cheer.